My sister broke my jaw over a laptop, but when my grandma saw the hospital photos, she pressed charges against my parents and sent her to prison for 6 months. Now they're begging for forgiveness while I'm living the life I always dreamed of. I'm 17 years old. I'm in my senior year of high school, and I need to tell this story because basically my entire life changed in a matter of weeks, and I still can't believe all of this actually happened. I guess I should start at the beginning, but the truth is the beginning was like 17 years ago when I was born, and my parents decided that I was going to be the one who received all the shit, while my sister, Brianna, who's 19 now, was going to be the perfect little princess who never did anything wrong. I don't know exactly when all of this started. I mean, it's not like there's a specific moment where I can say, this is when everything got fucked up. But my earliest memories already have that pattern. You know, Brianna getting everything she wanted while I had to settle for the leftovers, or directly nothing at all. My parents are both like 40 years old. They work at I don't know what. I never really cared much about their lives, to be honest. And basically, they've been together forever. They had Brianna when they were like 21, and then they had me 2 years later. And for some reason I'll never understand, they decided that Brianna was their precious jewel, and I was, I don't know, a piece of furniture or something. I grew up watching Brianna get everything she asked for. Like everything. From toys to brand name clothes to a car when she turned 16. While I had to wear her old clothes, her old stuff. And if I ever asked for anything, the answer was always, we don't have money, or stop being so selfish. And the worst part is that Brianna wasn't just the favorite, she was also a complete psychopath. Literal. She would hit me, scream at me, destroy my things, and my parents never said anything to her. If I complained, it was, stop being so dramatic, or you provoked her, or my favorite sisters fight. It's normal. When I was like 15, I started working part-time at a coffee shop near home, because I wanted to have my own money, so I wouldn't have to ask my parents for anything and could buy my own stuff. I saved every penny I earned because I had this dream of going to college far from here, getting a scholarship, studying something I liked, and basically never having to see my parents or Brianna again if I could help it. My paternal grandmother, my dad's mom, was basically the only person in my entire family who treated me like a normal human being. She's 66 years old, lives like an hour from here, and has always been kind to me. She'd ask me how I was doing, send me little gifts on my birthday, things like that. The problem is I didn't see her very often because my parents almost never invited her to the house, and when I went to visit her, I had to take the bus because obviously my parents wouldn't drive me anywhere. So we get to the point where everything exploded, which was like 6 months ago, right before my prom. I had been saving for months to buy myself a nice dress for prom. I wanted to feel good that day, have something that was mine and that nobody had given me out of pity or as Brianna's leftovers. I spent like $200 on that dress, which was a lot for me, but it was worth it, because it was beautiful. Navy blue with silver details. It fit me perfectly. I bought it like a month before the dance and I had it hanging in my closet. And every time I looked at it, I got more excited because I was going to go with this guy I liked, Jake, who was super sweet to me and his family was great too, and I felt like I was finally going to have a normal teenager moment. You know what I mean? The day of prom, I got home from school around 3 the afternoon. The dance was at 7, and I had everything planned. I was going to start getting ready at 4, do my hair, my makeup, put on the dress. Jake was going to pick me up at 6:30. I went up to my room and the dress wasn't in my closet. I looked everywhere, thinking maybe I had moved it without realizing, but nothing. I ran downstairs and found my mom in the kitchen and asked her if she had seen my dress, and she told me, so calm, oh yeah, I gave it to Brianna. She needs a dress for a party this weekend. I stood there unable to believe what I had just heard. I told her that was my dress, that I had bought it with my money for my prom, which was tonight. And she just looked at me and said, Brianna needs it more. Stop being so selfish. Besides, you have other dresses. I didn't have other dresses. Literally, I had nothing appropriate for a prom because everything I had was old casual clothes. I told this to my mom and she just shrugged and said, well, wear something you have. I'm sure you can put something together. I went to Brianna's room and she was there trying on my dress in front of the mirror, smiling like nothing was wrong. And when she saw me come in, she told me, it looks better on me anyway. You're too skinny and you have no boobs. I asked her to give me back the dress. I explained that my dance was literally in 4 hours, and she just laughed and told me to get out of her room. I went to my dad, who was watching TV in the living room, and told him everything. And he told me, "Don't start with your drama. Brianna needs the dress. End of story." I cried for like an hour in my room, trying to process that this was really happening, that they were going to ruin my prom, the only high school event I actually wanted to go to give my dress to Brianna for a random party that wasn't even that day. I tried calling Jake to explain that I couldn't go, but I couldn't even talk without starting to cry more. So I sent him a message saying that something had happened in my family and I wasn't going to be able to go to prom. He asked me if I was okay, if he could help with anything, but I just told him no, that I was so sorry. I stayed in my room all night crying while I watched on Instagram the photos of all my classmates at prom, having an amazing time. And there I was in old sweatpants eating ice cream, straight from the container and feeling like the most pathetic person in the world. The next day, my grandmother called me, which she did often, and asked me how prom had been, that she wanted to see pictures. And that's when everything changed, because something in me broke, and I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I told her everything. I told her about the dress. I told her I hadn't gone to prom, and when she asked me why I hadn't told her before, I told her the truth, that my parents treated me like garbage, that Brianna made my life impossible, that I had been enduring this for years because I didn't know what else to do. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and then my grandmother told me, "Do your parents know you're telling me this?" And I told her no, that they didn't even know she had called me. She told me she was going to pick me up the next day, that she wanted to take me to dinner and talk more calmly. That week, my grandmother came to pick me up. I told my parents I was going out with her and they didn't even ask anything. Basically, they never cared where I was or what I did as long as I didn't bother them. We went to a very nice Italian restaurant, and while we ate, she asked me a bunch of questions about my life, about school, about my plans for college, and I told her everything. Things I had never told her before, because I had always tried to maintain an image that everything was fine. I told her I wanted to study psychology, that I had already applied to several universities, that I had good grades despite everything. After dinner, we went to her car and she gave me a box wrapped in wrapping paper, and when I opened it, it was a MacBook, a new and beautiful laptop that must have cost like $1,000 or more. I started crying right there in the car because nobody, literally nobody, had given me something like that in my life. My grandmother told me that I needed a good computer for college, that she wanted to make sure I had the necessary tools to be successful. I got home that night with the laptop hidden in my backpack. I didn't want my parents or Brianna to see it because I knew exactly what was going to happen. But like 2 days later, Brianna came into my room without knocking, as she always did, and saw me using the laptop on my bed. Her eyes lit up with that look I knew too well, that look of, I want that and I'm going to have it. She asked me where I had gotten that computer and I told her Grandma had given it to me. She got furious immediately, started screaming about why Grandma had given me something so expensive, that she needed a new laptop for college, that it wasn't fair. I told her it wasn't my problem and to get out of my room. That night during dinner, Brianna told my parents about the laptop, and obviously they immediately told me to give it to Brianna, that she needed it more because she was in college and I was just about to start. I told them no, that it was a gift from Grandma for me and I wasn't going to give it to Brianna. My dad turned red with anger. You know, that face he makes when he's about to explode, and told me I was being selfish and spoiled, that after everything they had done for me, the least I could do was share with my sister. I told them, literally shouted at them, that they hadn't done anything for me in years, that everything I had gotten myself by working, and that if they took the laptop to give it to Brianna, I was going to call Grandma and tell her exactly what kind of parents they were. That shut them up a bit. I think they were scared that Grandma would find out how they treated me, so they told me to go to my room and we'd talk later. During the next few days, Brianna wouldn't stop bothering me about the laptop. She'd come into my room when I wasn't there, trying to find it because I had started carrying it with me everywhere in my backpack. One night, she followed me to the bathroom and blocked the door, told me to give her the laptop or she was going to make my life impossible. And I told her she already made my life impossible and I didn't care what she did. She got close to me, like super close, with that psychopath look she has, and told me, "You're going to regret this." I told her that if she touched me, I was going to tell Grandma everything. Every hit, every insult, every horrible thing she had done to me for years, and that this time I was going to have evidence because I was going to record everything. That threat worked for like a week. Brianna left me alone, but I could see she was planning something. She had that energy, you know, like when someone is waiting for the perfect moment to attack. I decided I couldn't keep going like this, that I needed real help. So, I sent my grandmother a message asking if we could meet again, that I needed to talk to her about something important. We met at a coffee shop near her house, and there I told her everything. I told her about the years of physical abuse from Brianna, the times she had pushed me down the stairs, the times she had hit me until I had bruises, the times she had destroyed my things. I told her about my parents' neglect, about how I never had enough food because Brianna would eat everything and they wouldn't say anything to her, about how I had to work since I was 15 to be able to buy myself clothes and school supplies, about how they made me feel like I was invisible or worse, like I was a burden. My grandmother was crying while I told her all this, and when I finished, she took my hands and told me, "Why didn't you ever tell me anything before?" I explained that I was scared, that I didn't know if she would believe me, that I thought maybe it was normal, that maybe I was the problem. She told me that none of that was normal, that what my parents had been doing was abuse and neglect, and that what Brianna had done to me was assault. She told me she was going to fix this, that she wasn't going to let it keep happening. That same day, my grandmother started making calls. She talked to my uncle, to other family members, and also to a friend of hers named Steven, who apparently is a lawyer or something. They decided they were going to go to my house that weekend to help me pack my things and get me out of there. I was terrified, literally shaking all the time, thinking about how my parents and Brianna were going to react, but I also felt some hope for the first time in years, like finally someone was listening to me and believing me. On Saturday, my grandmother arrived at the house with Steven. They knocked on the door and my mom opened it. She looked confused to see Grandma there with a man she didn't know. My grandmother told her very calmly that she was coming to get her granddaughter and her belongings, that she was going to take me to live with her. My mom tried to close the door in their faces, but Steven put his foot in the door and explained that if they didn't let me go voluntarily, they were going to call the police and social services. My dad came running to see what was happening, started yelling that they had no right to take his daughter, that this was ridiculous. My grandmother told him, with a voice I had never heard from her before, super cold and serious, that if he really cared about me, he wouldn't have treated me like garbage for years, and that now he was going to face the consequences. I went up to my room to pack my things. I didn't have much, to be honest. A couple of bags of clothes, some books, my laptop, old photos from when I was little and my biological mother was still alive, sentimental things I had kept for years. Brianna appeared in my bedroom doorway while I was packing. She looked furious. She had that red face she gets when she's about to lose control. She told me I was an ungrateful bitch, that after everything the family had done for me, this is how I repaid them, and started yelling a bunch of insults at me. I told her to get away from the door, that I was leaving this shitty house and never had to see her again. And that's when she completely lost control. She lunged at me, started hitting me, pulling my hair, scratching my face. I tried to defend myself, but she's bigger than me and stronger. She had me against the wall, punching my face with closed fists. I heard my grandmother and Steven run up the stairs. Steven pulled her to separate her from me, but she kept trying to reach me, screaming that she was going to kill me. My face was bleeding. I felt my nose was broken. Literally, I could feel that something wasn't right. And my grandmother started crying when she saw me. She hugged me while I collapsed on the floor. Steven called 911, and my parents were just standing there watching everything as if they couldn't believe what was happening, but like they didn't do anything to stop Brianna or to help me. The ambulance arrived in like 10 minutes. They put me on a stretcher and took me to the hospital. My grandmother went, with me in the ambulance. At the hospital, they examined me and confirmed that I had a fractured nose. They took pictures of all my injuries as evidence, and a social worker came to talk to me about what had happened. I told her everything, absolutely everything, and she took detailed notes and told me they were going to investigate the situation. I left the hospital that night with bandages on my face and an order not to eat anything solid for a few days. My grandmother took me straight to her house, set me up in the guest room, which from that moment would be my room, and told me that here I was safe, that nobody was going to hurt me ever again. I cried myself to sleep that night, but they were different tears, like not just from pain, but also from relief, because finally I was out of that house. The next day, Steven filed a police report against Brianna for assault, and also against my parents for child neglect. The police went to my old house and arrested Brianna. My parents bailed her out like 2 days later because obviously they were going to do whatever for their little princess. At first, my parents called me non-stop, leaving me voicemails telling me it was my fault, that I had ruined the family. How dare I involve the police in family matters? My grandmother told me not to answer them, to block their numbers, and I did. But then something interesting happened. Apparently, Stephen and my grandmother started contacting other family members, telling them what had really been happening, with photos from the hospital and everything, and the entire family started turning against my parents. Also, my grandmother told my parents that she was going to completely disinherit them, that not a penny of her money was going to reach them if they didn't acknowledge what they had done to me. Suddenly, my parents changed their tune. They started sending me messages saying they were sorry, that they hadn't realized how bad things were, that they wanted to fix our relationship. But it was obvious they were only doing it out of fear of losing the inheritance and because the whole family was judging them, not because they actually cared about me. The following weeks were weird. Like I was living at my grandmother's house trying to process everything that had happened while I also had to prepare for my final exams because I was still in school. My grandmother got me a therapist. I started going twice a week, and honestly, it helped a lot to be able to talk to someone neutral about everything I had lived through. The therapist helped me understand that nothing that happened to me was my fault, that I didn't do anything to deserve that treatment, that my parents and Brianna had serious problems that had nothing to do with me. The legal case took its course. There were hearings and more hearings. I had to testify about years of abuse, which was super difficult and traumatic. But Stephen prepared me well, and my grandmother was with me the whole time. In the end, Brianna was sentenced to 6 months in jail for assault, and my parents were formally charged with child neglect. Although they didn't go to jail, they had to pay fines, and it stayed on their record. I got a restraining order against Brianna, which basically says she can't come near me or contact me by any means. But I didn't want to put one against my parents because honestly, I didn't care about them enough to bother with that. I simply cut them out of my life completely. I managed to concentrate on my finals despite all the chaos, and I did incredibly well. I finished the year with a 3.8 gigapascals, which was more than I expected, considering the circumstances. I applied to my dream university, a school in another state like 6 hours from here, and they accepted me with a partial scholarship. My grandmother told me she was going to pay the rest, not to worry about money, just to focus on studying and being happy. Now, it's been like 6 months since all that. I'm in my first semester of college, studying psychology like I always wanted, living in the campus dorms, and honestly, I'm better than ever. I made amazing friends. My professors are great. I love what I'm studying. Jake, the guy I was going to go to prom with, and I started officially dating like 3 months ago, his family has basically adopted me and they treat me better than my own parents ever did. His mom cooks for me and invites me to dinner every week. His dad asks me how my classes are going. His younger siblings treat me like I'm their older sister. It's everything I always wanted to have in a family. Brianna gets out of jail in like 2 weeks, according to what my grandmother told me, but I'm not worried because I have the restraining order and because I live in another state now. My parents tried to contact me a couple of times during these months, but I never responded. I have no interest in having a relationship with them after. Everything. My grandmother visits me every month. She comes to spend the weekend and we go out to eat and catch up, and it's amazing to have someone who genuinely cares about me and supports me without conditions. Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if my grandmother had never intervened, if I had had to keep enduring the abuse until I turned 18 and could leave on my own. I'd probably be much more emotionally damaged. Or maybe Brianna would have seriously hurt me at some point. I don't know. I prefer not to think about those what-ifs. What matters is that now I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm building the life I always wanted to have. I still go to therapy. I'll probably keep going for a long time because years of abuse don't get processed in a few months, but I'm getting better every day. I've learned to set boundaries, to not feel guilty for prioritizing my well-being, to recognize toxic relationships and distance myself from them. Last week, Jake asked me if I would ever forgive my parents or Brianna, if maybe in the future there could be some kind of reconciliation. I told him the truth, that I don't know, that right now I can't even imagine having a conversation with them without feeling disgust and rage, but that maybe someday when I'm more healed, I can at least find peace without needing them in my life. I don't need their forgiveness or their regret to move forward. That's something I learned in therapy, that my healing doesn't depend on them acknowledging the damage they caused. It depends on me and the work I'm doing to be better.